What's up, guys? This is Preheat, and today we're just going to be talking about some of the new Mage news that's come out. I've been holding off on some of the new talent videos for each spec in hopes that we actually get some changes. Unfortunately, it looks like we haven't really seen much in the way of changes yet, but in the meantime, I just want to talk about just some general things that Mage is getting in Dragonflight. Okay, so to start things off, I do want to talk about something. This isn't necessarily new with this build, but it did come out in the build right before. It looks like we're actually getting the double Time Warp Legendary back. If you didn't play in Legion, basically there was this legendary ring called Shard of the Exodar that allowed us to basically get our own Time Warp. And the idea is this talent here, right? Temporal Warp. If you have Temporal Displacement or other similar effects like Sated, then you can use Time Warp to grant yourself 30% haste for 40 seconds. So this is a pretty exciting talent. It's not implemented yet, so we don't really know much else about it. But I do have some concerns about this talent. So obviously it's a good thing that mages are able to use like a second lust. This seems like something that was pretty nice in Legion, and I'm glad it's coming back. But it only works if you already have the Sated debuff, right? So if your raid is going to use lust at like the last 40 seconds of the boss, then this doesn't really do anything for you. It's still just based off when your raid wants to lust in the first place, if you can even get any use out of it at all, which I'm not a huge fan of. I feel like the way that this was initially designed was almost stifled by the legendary design, right? Because it was part of an item, so it was just an effect. We couldn't have a new skill that was associated with it. But now we have talents, right? We have these new talents. Basically, we're getting all these new abilities that do very minor things for us, right? Stuff like having greater invisibility and normal invisibility so that you can get, the talent that makes you run faster with normal invisibility. You also have things like Blast Wave and, a slew of other talents that aren't really all that impactful. They're just kind of like small buttons that do something. They're mostly useless. So I would really like to see this come back as a proper skill. I don't think the limitation of it having to be some secondary effect, right, because it was originally a legendary, should be relevant in this case. It basically gives you the same buff, right? It's the same thing as popping Time Warp, only it's individual, and obviously it doesn't matter if you're sated or not. It would work just like Shard of the Exodar, right? Like it would not stack with other lust effects. It would be its own thing. And, one new button basically that would give you the same buff as it did before. This would allow us to actually have a lot more freedom in when we want to use lust, right? Because the example I gave before where your raid doesn't use lust until maybe the last 40 seconds of the fight, that's the worst case, but there's actually bad cases in between, right? So if, let's say your raid lust at 5 minutes into the fight, well, effectively you've lost one use of this because if you're lusting at 5 minutes, then the first time you'll actually get the value out of this new talent is at 5 minutes and 40 seconds. And that means that if the fight ends at, 10 minutes, then you only really got half the value you would have gotten if this was a proper skill that you could use. So yeah, I really hope that with this is just like a first draft of it. I really hope that they think this through a little bit better, because having this be like its own separate button to me makes a lot more sense. And we don't have the design limitations of legendaries anymore, right? So just make it a skill. We also have other skills that were data mined as well. Once again, we don't have these implemented yet, so all we can really do is just kind of guess that they work the way they do. Obviously, we don't know where on the talent tree they'll be either, but we have Energized Barriers, which is basically this PvP talent. It allows you to remove all snare effects with your barrier. It also allows you to have a chance to proc your Fire Blast, your Fingers of Frost, your Clear Casting whenever you're meleeed. Freezing Cold is a new talent as well. This makes it so that Cone of Cold freezes enemies in place for 4 seconds, and spells will not break this effect as long as they are your spells. So if you're out there doing questing or if you're PvPing, this seems like a pretty strong talent, especially since it'll be available to all specs. And with the new Shatter talent, you should be able to shatter even if you're fire or arcane, and the enemies will be frozen by your Cone of Cold for 4 seconds. We also have Hyper Impact, which is a new talent that basically makes it so if we successfully interrupt an enemy, we do get a small damage boost. It's going to be 30% of our spell power, which is pretty small, all things considered, but I do welcome stuff like this. I mean, this basically gives mages an incentive to interrupt, right? And, the knockup is a nice feature of this as well. Moving on from here, we also have a change to a talent that already exists called Tempered Flame. So Tempered Flame reduces the cast time of Pyroblast, it makes it crit more, and it also reduces the amount of time we have in combustion. There's also the other effect of this, which is that it is a choice talent. So basically you have a choice between 2 talents whenever you pick this up, and choosing this talent is a choice against the other talent. So I'm just going to put in some talents really quickly here so I can demonstrate what I'm talking about. So if we work our way down to this talent, as you can see, we have Tempered Flames right here. So this has been buffed to now 40% reduced cast time and 40% reduced duration of combustion. So both of these are improved, right? But once again, if you're choosing this, you're choosing against your crit to mastery conversion scaling for combustion, right? Because the other choice here is combustion duration. Your combustion grants mastery equal to 50% of your critical strike stat for its duration and lasts 2 seconds longer, right? So basically, if we don't pick this talent, right, if we spec into Tempered Flames instead, we're eliminating all scaling that we get from crit, basically, because we don't have any conversion. Crit is already such a bad stat, even with the mastery conversion that happens here. So I feel like this has like just so many downsides currently. I mean, obviously they can balance this so that it will work, and it's a neat idea. I'm excited by it for sure. I just wish that maybe the like the mastery scaling here, I wish that we just had a baseline of 50, and then maybe this talent would improve it back to 100, which is what it used to be back in BFA before it was nerfed. Other than this, we also have some new things to talk about as well with this current build. So first up is going to be Flurry. Flurry has a reduced recharge. It's now 30 seconds instead of 40 seconds. So that's 10 seconds less than it was before, which is a very welcome change for Frost. Notice these will all be kind of Frost oriented changes. So we also have Glacial Spike. This is a 15% buff to Glacial Spike, which is huge. I would say that the biggest problem I saw with the Frost talents, aside from just the bloated talents, the pathing, the lack of real options. Another issue was just that the Glacial Spike stuff, it seemed like maybe it wouldn't bring it back to a level where you'd actually play Glacial Spike. But with adjustments like this, right, on the talent itself, it definitely seems like Glacial Spike might be back to the levels it was previously when we actually had some competition between TV and Glacial Spike. So this is a very welcome change. I'm definitely excited for this, and really excited just to see more changes to the Frost Mage tree, because it is not looking too great right now. It's not too hot, pun intended. So hopefully we get some changes there. That would be great. Not listed are some other talents as well that have been added here. I'm going to zoom in so that you can read this a little better. So we have Ignite Damage has a 15% chance to reduce the cooldown of Fire Blast by 1 second. This is obviously a fire talent, right? It's basically the same thing as like the Phoenix Reborn talent, only it affects Fire Blast. So I assume in AoE this is going to be quite good. From what I understand from the data mining, this has a 15 RPPM, so it should proc, pretty regularly. I don't know if it has an internal cooldown though currently. We also have Frostbite, which is the same name as the talent that we already had, right? That's why they renamed it to Icebound here. So Frostbite is going to be a talent that basically gives us Mortal Strike for Frost. So if you have freeze or chilling effects on the enemy, they're going to have reduced healing. Definitely seems like a PvP oriented talent here. And then we also have Time Manipulation. So casting Arcane Missiles reduces the cooldown of your loss of control abilities by 1 second. Also Fire Blast, also Ice Lance on frozen targets. These all do the same thing. So I don't know specifically what they mean by loss of control abilities, but I assume that's going to be stuff like Dragon's Breath or, Frost Nova, anything that basically causes you to lose control of your character. Other stuff maybe like Supernova as well, right? Not really sure exactly how this is going to work until we see it, but nevertheless, it is interesting to note. And that's really it for the new Mage changes. I was really hoping we would get more with this new beta build, but unfortunately, it looks like we don't really have any new talents. I did release a first impressions written write-up for Wowhead. This is going to be talking about all of the talent trees and how I feel about them currently. If you haven't already read this, definitely give it a look. It's going to be linked in the description below. And then this is basically what I'm going to be basing the videos that I make about the individual specs and their talents and the first impressions that are coming out soon. Basically, this is what I'm basing those off of. So yeah, that about does it for Mage. Unfortunately, we don't really have much else to go off of here. We do have some changes, but nothing really to the talent tree yet. Hopefully that stuff comes soon. The Frost and Arcane tree are not looking too great. The Fire one seems okay, but the class tree in general for, all the specs, it's not looking great at all. The pathing is terrible. There's so many bloated conduit nodes that basically do nothing. Yeah, not a huge fan of it. Obviously, we'll talk more about that soon. As far as other content goes, keep your eyes out for a Fire talent video coming out soon. And then I'm also going to be discussing the Evoker rework, which actually has some really exciting stuff. If you care about Mage, if you enjoy playing Mage, definitely look into Evoker because it's looking to be a really, really great class to play. And it has it almost kind of scratches the same itch, I would say, as Mage. So I'm definitely really excited to be playing Evoker and Dragonflight, and who knows, I might actually play Evoker as my main. I mean, we'll have to see, right? But the current impressions of my talents, if you want to check those out, are still relevant. I recently did a roundtable on Max's stream, which is still, you know, up to date because they haven't really changed much of the talents there. We also did a first impressions video with the Mage Theory crafters, guide writers, got all the big names together from the Alter Time Discord and talked about the Mage talents at length. It's a bit of a long video, but definitely go check out the timestamps if you want just the summaries at the end of that video for each spec. But yeah, if you like this video, go ahead and give it a like. And if you want to see more of this kind of content, go ahead and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.